Yoshi! Pro Gamer!
Hey everyone, this is Metayoshi Pro Gamer here, and this is the series finale of Shadow Mario vs. the Aces, going up against Petey Piranha. Blah, blah, blah. He's the strongest character in the game. He has a high-end straight ball, which is a very deadly combination in the right hands, especially one that absolutely never misses the accuracy timing. Here I'm going for a pipe strat, but I didn't go full power and I got minus 1% RNG, so I had to bail out and do a backup strat, bouncing off of the pipe, and I'm on the fairway a decent ways away instead. Petey usually hits to the right because he can, and is left with a wedge to the green for a very soft shot. Yeah, you'll notice Petey for the most part plays pretty high shots that don't roll much. Here my best strategy is to attempt to use the green to my advantage, just kind of catch the ball at the cusp of it and kind of curve in. So I'm doing so with the 5-iron with the expectation of rolling about 10 yards against the slope. It's very predominantly back to front. And then here, while Petey is in sand wedge range, clubs up to an approach and cuts off some distance, which lowers loft, and no, even so, still lost a bit of distance on the roll, but just when you think that the computer is in a bit of a rut or plays a less than decent shot, usually they'll pull some crazy punt and save the birdie anyway. So it's pretty annoying. My putt wasn't too bad, and so we split the hole. This is match play, where you try to win enough holes to the point where the opponent can't make up the deficit. And by default, you start at the first to win 10, but then every odd hole that you tie means that the required number of wins or medals, as indicated in this game, decreases by 1, which inherently makes sense. And so it's if to say that if I win the next 9 holes in a row, then that would be I would be 9 up with I would be 9 up after 10 holes with only 8 to play, and so Petey couldn't possibly do anything. So that's how that would work, for instance. Yeah, I kind of butchered my drive a little bit and barely stayed in bounds, but tried to play a softer shot out of the heavy rough, since you don't go full distance, and so that definitely adds a little more punch to it. But still rolled quite a bit despite doing bottom of the ball. And thankfully, Petey Piranha was not inside approach distance, because he's absurdly consistent at outright chipping in for the eagle on this second hole, which is very annoying indeed. As you may have seen from the hype montage, a lot of Petey's chip-ins were on the 1st, 2nd, and 7th holes. That was another push. This is a rainy hole, and it's uphill. You'll notice the backdrop when we get back to when we zoom out again. It's got the mountain with Peach, Mario, Luigi, and Yoshi on the sides. Rather than being a homage to Mario Party 3, where when you complete the story mode, then you get your face etched in the mound. Rather, I think it's supposed to be resembling Mount Rushmore, which is a monument in South Dakota that an artist and his team had sculpted the faces of American presidents on the side on a mound face in South Dakota. And these faces, not in the correct exact order, but I know the 4 faces were Washington, let me think, yeah, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and Theodore Roosevelt. Now, I missed my putt and Petey made his, so he won this hole, and that already kind of put the pressure on me. Thankfully, this is a hole that you can sometimes win with perfect shots, because unless under very specific circumstances, Petey Piranha actually opts to play a shorter drive here. He doesn't go for the green pipe ever, and if he ever does play a big shot, he plays a full drive that is in between the mushroom and the yellow pipe and just rolls all the way down because, well, he's a monster. My strat is I play for the fast fairway patch that's on top of the hill on the right side and try to get a big bounce past where the green pipe would exit. But if I face a rain or a headwind, then I go for the green pipe instead. I can afford to lose a fair bit from full power and still make it. Yeah, Petey can't make it, so unless he chips in. And this is an opportunity that I have, but I basically have to hit perfect marks. I'm expecting to land on the rough and have it significantly cushion the roll, so yeah, that definitely took a lot of roll off. Not as much as I would have thought, actually. Yeah, Petey was not in the best of lies, and so quite possibly it was the case that RNG may have prevented him from chipping in, but again, you never know. And so because of Petey's reservations and my good shot making, I won the hole. And that turns out to be very, very important. This hole, I don't screw around. I don't think that platform to the right, that area to the right past the bunker is worth going for. There's a lot of fast fairway, and if you hit the distance or misjudge the wind, then you're bouncing off and into the water and in a pretty bad spot. Of course, Petey doesn't care because he A, hits his accuracy perfect every time, and B, has 0 distance RNG on his drives. Like, that's a fact that's true for all the ace computers. I switched to a draw to kind of present a better angle. That pin on the left is kind of awkward. Probably it would actually be easier to just aim farther and then kind of back it up like Petey does, because this is another one of those back to front greens. Yeah, definitely a little bit of tricky slope, but usually more often than not being aggressive is the way to go. Especially if you notice on the green grid that your slopes are more dominant in the beginning, because that's going to influence the ball immediately, and at the end because the ball is moving slower and thus is more subject to the slope. I usually, if I'm landing just short of pin height, I'll probably use some type of backspin or super backspin, but if I am landing close to the fringe at the front, then I can let it go because there's kind of a mound, and so if I land on the front of that mound, then that deadens the roll significantly. Petey often opts to hit a very high shot. It hardly rolls at all. Yeah, we end up landing in pretty good parts of the green. Often it's not about getting close, it's about just being in the right area to make your putt easy. Because if your putt's easy enough, then you can afford to overhit your putt by up to 5 feet. Heck, 6 or 7 even sometimes, depends. Another hole with rain. Yeah, I find myself aiming more to the right, because the hazards on the right side, maybe aside from Flower Patch, aren't all that bad, but the Flower Patch is close enough to the green where you should have the power to salvage something toward the green. It's just a matter of whether you have the loft or the trajectory to get around the mushrooms. But it's far better than being in the water. Yeah, the combination of rain and tailwind is pretty nasty, so usually you either need to allow plenty of distance or some kind of backspin combos. So I'm doing bottom of ball and backspin, but you'll see that I still won't get much bite out of this. Especially if you land on a downslope. Petey, since he's so powerful, he cuts the distance to wedge distance, and he just opts to use a wedge and just roll all the way. And he's gotten chip-ins on this hole quite a bit. Yeah, and that by and large takes care of the easiest hole on the course. I think I was checking my phone for some reason at that time. I should have just been able to do click click. Yet another push, and 6 medals left apiece. This is a hole that I try to take advantage of an albatross strat. I do a weaker form of the high slice trick. You have to make sure that you don't mistime it so early that you miss you miss the impact zone entirely, and your shot just goes to fuck, and it's OP, and you have to concede the hole. Petey, he goes far out and right, and because he's so strong and hits so high, he actually is one of the few characters that has the loft to, you know, shoot all the way up on a second shot, and he has albatrossed a few times that way, which is absurdly annoying considering that for me, albatross is no guarantee. Eagle is, you know, extremely likely. But yeah, that was an excellent chip. You know, it was more or less reading the slope. If you're not using backspin, you definitely have to allow a few yards of roll. And I opted that time. I wasn't having luck with 8-iron strats, so I just figured I'd go with the wedge instead, keep things a little bit simpler. Yeah, I tend to play for that patch of fairway that's there on the right side, because if I mishit late, then that's going to skew the ball left, but I also lose enough distance so that I really don't have to. There's kind of a backup patch of fairway that's left and short of that giant mushroom. If I mishit early, then that sends the ball right, but I don't think that puts me in any terribly relevant hazards. It's the second shot that sucks, though. Usually I play it lower just so that it minimizes my chances of playing the big mushroom. That was a very hot ball that, you know, backspin didn't do a whole lot. I was planning on hitting, you know, like more towards the front of the green so that I would kind of hit a mound to slow the ball down, but that didn't quite happen. I overhit it, and so the backspin didn't have the desired effect, and so, you know, once again, chips are king. If there's one stroke that you should practice over and over and get as many situations as possible, it's chip-ins. Those short approaches. If you're inside 10 yards, try to sink it every single time. This is a hole I don't like at all, because unless I play all the way to the right and like short, and I have like a 200-yard second shot to a not easy green, otherwise I have to take a risk and play a long drive, and so then I have only left with 100 yards. I had a pretty bad miss hit, and I caught some fast fairway, and so I'm nestled among mushrooms. More likely than not, I'm positioned alongside, you know, said mushroom such that, you know, my body's obscured, and so that kind of slashes your shot in half, and so now it's like, I don't have the distance, which that's an extremely significant problem, because if I aim myself further, then Shadow Mario then nothing's in the way of my swing, but then it's like now I'm aiming so far away, so, you know, what am I to do? You know, I keep experimenting to see what my options are and adjusting impact and things like that, and then it kind of hits on me, and I figure, okay, you know, what if I tried like a high slice trick, like again, but I crank up the power as much as possible, and I know that I'll lose a bunch of power by a mishit, but then I'll also have the loft necessary, and it was kind of a YOLO sort of thought, but extremely lucky that it worked. However, you know, not out of the woods, because, you know, I have to chip in again. Not a whole lot of slope to deal with, and extremely lucky that I made that, because you see, if you're not ahead through the front nine, you're kind of sort of fucked, because you really have no win conditions on the back 9. Petey will just outright birdie and eagle everything else. There's really no shortcuts. All your shortcuts are on the front 9. So you pretty much have to be winning by then. And you know what? I have twice been winning, you know, up through like 16th, 17th, 18th holes, only to choke and throw it away. And there was one time where I actually was ahead on the 18th hole, lost the 18th, and then choked the first and lost. Yeah, the 11th is not too bad unless the weather's bad. Usually backspin's not too bad of an idea. And then there are flat parts, and no, it's not that bad if you're close to the hole. Now this hole, if you don't have 2 extremely good shots, you're probably going to lose, because Petey is strong enough to get on the green in 2 consistently. So you pretty much have to use the fast fairway in some form or another, but of course, you know, wind and distance control being oftentimes difficult to account for means, you know, you might not always be hitting it. Yeah, 600 yards, that is a lot. And I always pray that, like, Petey will get a bad lie, but you know what? Of course not. I mean, it's like immune to RNG almost. Almost immune to RNG. There have been times where I have won against the ACPU almost solely because they end up in an unfortunate lie, and then they get distance variation that fucks up their strat, and then they lose the hole. I had a mishit that sent my ball askew. I was planning to roll up the hill onto the lip of the green, but caught the chomp pit and rolled out of it. It's one of those situations again, isn't it? Petey is just so good. Man, the mushroom's got a bit of a complication too. If I touch that, then that's GG. No, lose the hole. Yeah, in general, aside from having there being a dozen chomp pits and being very long, the green is just... this green sucks. I realized that hitting the mark I did was a little bit aggressive, and so I thought, okay, adjust the impact to maybe correct it, but that was an overcorrection on my part, and so I came up short, and, well, Petey eagles the hole like always. You know, if you don't eagle that hole, you're pretty much going to lose. This hole, I was contemplating whether I wanted to take the risk of using the yellow pipe to basically warp to the edge of the green, where I would have anywhere from a 15 to 25 yard chip chance. And I decided that, you know, all these attempts, and I could always start over, because I've been in this situation where I've been about even through 13 so many times before, and it's like, yeah, sure, why not? But lo and behold, no, I missed my distance, and I didn't No, it's like, if you don't catch it immediately, then you might as well just leave your shot alone and not try to do anything adventurous with the impact, because you might just mess up even more. But what I should have done was I should have moved the impact back to the center, so that I would have gained some distance back and lost just enough loft so that I would have found myself possibly back into the pipe. But now I have yet another difficult situation. If you're too close to this mushroom, then you probably won't have the loft to get through. +3 came up, so I thought, oh hey, you know, maybe I could land on the rough and just kind of use some spin to hop it out, but nope, of course not. Here we go again. I overhit, so that obviously means drop the impact point, which for short chips both increases the loft and lowers the carry, oddly enough, and so that's an excellent method of distance control, especially on approaches. But for longer approaches, though, that it works a little bit differently. This hole is very annoying. most computers will go into the yellow pipe and just warp up like that, and that's usually pretty easy to do. However, the problem that I have usually with the pipes is that if you're a stronger character with less control and you mess up your accuracy timing, then you're probably going to be missing that pipe, and you'll end up in a worse situation than if you just played a stronger shot up the mountain in the first place. But nonetheless, I thought, and I'll just go for the green. I'll just go for the green pipe. You know, what's the worst that can happen, really? And so, yeah, I end up a little higher up, and more often than not, my philosophy is I want to play the longest and best initial drive possible whenever I can. No, I mean, there are exceptions, like the 5th hole on the course, the one with the cheap cheaps. It's just not quite worth it to do that same type of strat. Now with wind and elevation changes, it can be confusing to figure out what the right type of shot is, because on the one hand, yeah, you know, a headwind, you're going to lose distance, but on the other hand, you're gaining loft, and so you'll be climbing up the hill easier, and so trying to figure out, oh, okay, do those cancel each other out? No, sometimes that actually makes you overthink, and so it's a thing that comes down to practice. And you know, there's a lot of tension at this point. No, because it's actually pretty rare that I get a round that goes this far. Usually I fuck up, but I actually have not fucked up once. Well, maybe in the miss hit on the 12th, but other than that, I mean, haven't fucked up once and still even. That's how hard this is. Yeah, this is another one of those things, you want to catch as much of that fast fairway as possible, but you don't want to be nestled right against that mushroom that's down at the bottom of the hill in the middle, otherwise you kind of have no shot. This is a front to back green, which is very annoying, and so you need a lot more room and backspin than usual, but if you allow too much room, then there's fast fairway there, and so no, you'll just end up bouncing over the green anyway, unless you literally allow like 30 yards for the ball to roll. Okay. The thing about bunkers is that once you go beyond a sand wedge, then the loft decreases considerably, and so usually, especially if it's windy, I try, if at all possible, to club up from the sand wedge. I see that it's sloping a little bit right, so I figure, okay, how much is the ball gonna roll? And so, yeah, I figured I'd move over a slight bit. But then, yeah, somehow all things canceled out. Because actually, it ends up the ball did roll a little bit more on the green than I had anticipated. But again, inside 10 yards, you know, like, should be able to sink those anyway. They're not that hard. This hole is also extremely annoying. If you end up short and you don't catch enough of the fast fairway, then you'll end up under the mushroom and you literally have no shot because the mushroom acts as a ceiling. You either have two options really. You can either land on the fast fairway gently and just allow it room to, roll to a stop, or you can go to the right, but I've had problems going to the right oftentimes, so I figured I'd try that, and that actually worked out pretty well. Yeah, going uphill with this tailwind, definitely a lot of backspin is recommended, especially with a character with a low spin stat like Shadow Mario. Yeah, in general, his stats are pretty terrible, but his distance and his trajectory are interesting enough to merit using, and it's kind of a niche factor, but if it weren't for the fact that it's the theme of the series, then I would use Donkey Kong over Shadow Mario anytime. Depending on where the flag is, this hole can be either easy or absurdly difficult. With this, Yeah, the location's in the middle, so you kind of have to land the ball, like, up at the front and then let the ball roll all the way back down. Like, there's no way, if you're landing on the downslope, that backspin's going to do diddly squat at bringing the ball back. It's just not going to happen. So I try to aim for kind of like a flatter area that's in the middle, short of the hole, and then just let backspin do the rest, and that actually ended up working pretty well. Because the problem with trying to let the ball roll down is if you go too short, then it's not going to roll down much, and you're going to have an impossible downhill slopey putt. Alright, so we're going into the 18th, and no, we're still even, so it's a sudden death situation. You know, if someone wins, then it's over, but otherwise we have to keep playing more holes until someone wins. Now, this is annoying because Petey goes for this pipe. I never see that happen on any other hole. Oh, but what's that? He has a crappy lie. So that could introduce some distance variation that messes things up. Now, as for me, I mean, I could go for a pipe myself, but honestly, I want to make sure that if I do mess up, then I kind of am not, I don't lose. Because if I go for a pipe, but then if I miss any one mark and I'm not in that pipe, then it's GG. Because so often what happens with these lies is that there's just zero variation at all. And so I go for that fast fairway area, but I overhit it and I catch the fast fairway, so I feared I was going to land in the rough, but I didn't. This is a very bad line nonetheless, and I analyzed my options trying to think, okay, can I get some type of impact zone, but nope. I have to play, if I want that green, then I'm going to have to hit the accuracy dead on. So that's kind of unfortunate. That an RNG crops up, and I figured, that's fine, I would rush on the rough, but seeing that camera, yep, I catch the bricks. So I slowed it, I just let it go and I didn't speed it up for dramatic effect. Now Petey goes for what's this? +3 is a lot for a 200-yard shot. And the ACPU doesn't correct for RNG. Yeah, sometimes the ACPU will mess up and will underhit approaches. So for me, it's sink and win. From that, I was fearing that I actually misaimed to the left, but I sunk it. My one regret is that I was not recording this live. Because at the time, I was screaming. Like, I was bawling my eyes out that this is finally over, and I will never have to face Ace Star Petey Piranha ever again. But yeah, I have to have honestly spent, let me think, 50 plus hours just on Petey. So yep, I win 1-up through sudden death on the 18th. Hardest opponent by far. This was an excellent series. I had fun. Thanks for watching.